Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining our Into the Blue final event of the first cycle of our National Ocean Platform. My name is Knut Mostu. I am the Chief Operating Officer of the UN Global Compact Network Norway. Today we have quite an interesting program for you. First I'll give a few introductions and then I'll hand over to the chair of our board, Wenche Grønbrekk, and she will start the first panel discussion. Before we do that, I wanted to give you some context on the National Ocean Platform. So when the UN Global Compact Network Norway got its start as an organization in Norway in September of 19, we identified a few sectors that we needed to work on with a strategy. So our strategy was to focus on solution and the opportunity that sustainability provides, and the ocean as one of the most important sectors where Norway can contribute to us reaching the sustainability goals. So our first platform that we discussed was to create a national ocean platform based on the great work that had been done and was being done by the International Ocean Platform led by Sturla and Erik, and of course Wenche. So we identified we took the same structure as we had from the international platform, and we saw the interest from Norwegian companies from the start and how many Norwegian companies wanted to contribute to the work on ocean. So we have seen in international rankings and questionnaires that the ocean comes quite far down on companies' priorities list, except in Norway. So we have a special responsibility on solving the crisis and providing solutions for reaching the SDGs related to ocean. So we took the 5 tracks from the International Ocean Platform, and we adapted them to a Norwegian setting. That setting, or those tracks, were transport/shipping, data/mapping, production/aquaculture, energy, and plastic/cleanup. So those were the 5 main areas or tipping points we wanted to work on. Around a year ago, we did our first launch in a room not far from here, where we had some of the leading companies on ocean presenting. Thanks to you, thanks to the companies that have participated all this way. And now that we come to a close in this first cycle, I think it's good that we take a step back and look at where have we come from and what are the success factors of these, or what are the achievements of this platform. So it is important to say that we gathered around the first round, we had around 100 companies. Out of those 100 stakeholders, out of those 100 companies, we gather around 26 to 30 participants between companies and institutions to work on these 5 action tracks. We had some surprises. We thought, for example, that at the end of this, that data/mapping would not be not so relevant after talking to a lot of companies. But we found actually in the process that a lot of companies did find interesting projects in that area. So that has been a learning for us as well, to see that it's not necessarily the start of the project that's going to define all the solutions that's going to come out of this. I hope you can hear me well. I can't hear myself, so I hope, yeah. So we started with of course the recruitment phase. We got input from the stakeholders. We recruited companies and organizations into the platform, and then the camera is. We recruited the companies into that, and out of the first phase, the ideation phase, where we held 6 workshops, facilitated by PwC. Special thanks to PwC for collaborating with us on this project. And out of that came 42 concrete ideas within the 4 main groups. I'll just reiterate the 4 groups are product, services or marketplaces that the companies can develop themselves or in combination with others, policy proposals, research and development, and nudging, communication and consumer behavior campaigns. Out of that, there were some concerns raised. One of the concerns was how to work more with local suppliers to address environmental issues in coastal waters. That was one of the areas. The second one was a need to create standards to map Scope 3 emissions from transportation. I know that there are companies working on that, and there are some Norwegian suppliers already looking into data-driven standards for Scope 3 emissions, especially ocean-related and transport-related. 3, can we do more with traceability, specifically in plastics and fish feed? 4, pilot projects to test new sustainable plastic products. 5, identify potential projects in topics such as fish stock management, mapping of water flows, and impact on marine ecosystems. After that, we took those 42 concrete consultation phase. In the consultation phase, we had over 30 meetings with participants to discuss these issues. We also had external participants from the Marine Stewardship Council and the Norwegian Seafood Council. There were a couple of ideas coming out of the consultation phase, which was to create guidelines and standards for plastic use in fisheries and aquaculture, focus on materials and procurement, i.e. in nets, fish nets, and initiatives to combat ghost fishing. Another one was to create a combined risk assessment tool for the entire ocean ecosystem, potentially a combined environmental impact assessment for oil and gas, wind and aquaculture. Engaging with local municipalities, kommuner, across Norway to understand the negative impact on commercial activity is having on the local marine environment. Also develop a solution to recycle styrofoam used in packaging by the seafood industry in Norway and explore alternative materials. Designing a system to better communicate statistics on the plastic problem and create guidelines designed for companies on best practice when they pursue plastic the disposal of plastic. So now we are in a kind of second phase. What is happening now? We are looking into 2 different ways forward. One is the creation of an action center where we have just been given the green light from our board to work further on this project, where we want to create an ecosystem for the development and scaling of these ideas. We're working with financial actors, we're working with solution providers, we want to work with the companies to create this kind of startup village for companies to scale these ideas and create the infrastructure and ecosystem necessary for these ideas to succeed. A second part we are looking into now is the second cycle of the platform. You will of course get more information on the action center later. For this second cycle, we will take the learnings from the first cycle and we will put those into practice. And some of the learnings we've had is an increased alignment with the international platform. Also that we need more arenas to discuss and present the key ideas at events like the Nordshipping 2022 and the UN Ocean Conference of 2022. We also want to increase the role of, or increase the focus of the role of finance, and you will see more of that today, in the ocean sector, as well as policy and regulation, EU Taxonomy. We also want to focus on science-based targets. We know, most of you already know the Science-Based Targets Initiative that we are launching a huge campaign on now. I urge you to sign up to this initiative, we're doing the recruitment for that now. It will start in August. That will be one of the largest campaigns led by the UN Global Compact headquarters, also with the regional and local events. So we urge you to sign up to that and to start the process on setting science-based targets. But also in the next step, where science-based targets for nature are now coming in with 4 new areas. That is not just environment, but it's clean water, ocean, ecosystems, and biodiversity. So the 4 action tracks we are looking into now, we of course want feedback from you, is looking into blue taxonomy, blue finance, science-based targets, and biodiversity. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming, and I want to give a warm round of applause, a good introduction to Wenche Grønbrekk. She is the chair of our board, and we are grateful for her presence here. She will lead today's first panel. So if you can hear me, Wenche, I give the word to you, and thank you. Thank you, everyone. For her presence here. She will lead today's first panel. So if you can hear me, Wenche, word to you, and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Knut. Please let me know if there's any issues with the sound. I believe you can all hear me. We have a first topic today. Our first panel will discuss the role of blue finance in the seafood sector. Quite an interesting and relevant topic today. We have several developments in this space, and the Norwegian aquaculture industry is moving into green or blue financing as well. The context is, of course, that according to the Ocean Panel, aquaculture and fisheries could supply over 6 times more food than it does today. And aquaculture in particular is expected to significantly contribute to this growth, which will have to be sustainable. So what role can finance play in promoting a sustainable seafood industry? We have 3 panelists with us today who can give different perspectives on these questions. So maybe if you could all unmute yourselves and show your video, so we know you're with us today. Thank you so much. Maybe start with you, Doug. Doug, you're the senior vice president in DNB Seafood. What role does green or blue finance have today in seafood, and what is the potential for the seafood industry, do you think, in this regard?
It actually has an important position. It's sort of gone from 0 to quite important very quickly. You know, green loans have been around for a few years, not long. But I guess in one way the big kickoff was when Movi launched a green bond January last year. So if you look now at the Oslo Stock Exchange has a list of green bonds, and about 8% of those are seafood. And that's a list that's very dominated by the government and the finance sector. If you instead look at high yield corporate bonds, not in Norway, but in the Nordics, seafood is actually close to 20%. So it's become meaningful, and we believe it will become even more meaningful. We feel its sector is very well suited for green financing.
Very nice. We have an industry representative with us in the panel today as well. Mariann Remøy, you're the ESG manager in Lerøy. Where do you see blue financing go, and what topics do you see as most relevant for blue financing in the seafood sector?
Well, we think that it's imperative to look at the whole value chain to identify where investments in sustainable solutions can have a significant and important impact. The key focus areas should be on reducing carbon and environmental footprints wherever possible. Obviously, there are lots of examples I could mention, but just to mention a few, I would like to highlight that the first one is investments related with the aim at reducing the overall carbon footprint. This could be, for instance, within R&D and development of new sustainable feed ingredients, which is a major part of the Scope 3 emissions in aquaculture. It could be energy efficiency and clean transportation, such as investments in electrification of feed barges and working boats. The second part I would like to highlight is investments related to improve biodiversity, water and wastewater management. The aim is to improve fish health and fish welfare. Examples of this is post-smolt facilities with RAS technology that has a high degree of water recycling and reduces water pollution. It could be fish farm certification such as the ASC, which is a certification for responsible aquaculture practices, and innovation related to fishing gear and new cooling system on board fishery vessels. The last one I would like to highlight, which we also find important, is investments related to waste management and circular economy that are optimal for food safety, where the overall aim is to reduce food waste and enhance the recyclable content on the packaging solutions. Just to mention, just briefly, for larger vessels, because Lerøy has 10 trawlers in its fleet, for our ocean-going fleets, if they are to be included, they should base on low-carbon fuels alternative. And there are ongoing discussion of what is the best solution. So we see that it will take some time before this is available.
Very good. Lots of movement there. Many topics, of course, that is on the agenda. Science-based targets, certainly one that is emerging also in aquaculture. Lisa, how do you see this development change or move into the landscape of third-party verifications? Is the blue economy a new big business opportunity for a company like DNV?
Well, if we look into this decade, we think that, or we see that this is the decade for transformation to new ways of operating, and we need to tackle the challenges and the emerging risk in order to safeguard the climate and the environment. We also see that this EU Taxonomy is a very good example of policies and mechanisms that encourage transparency, sustainability in marine aquaculture, the responsibility to turn the page into, or actually beyond, the green, responsible, trusted delivery. So the verification or the business for our side is of course something we look into, and the need for verification of the methods, the data input into this ecosystem is needed. And in the end, we are going to meet the consumer with the trusted, open and transparent communication on the neutral or positive environmental production of healthy fish, environmental friendly farms and components, healthy food, biodiversity impact, sustainable feed, recycled packaging, climate efficient transportation, ethical performance, etc. So there's a lot of data input that is needed and to be trusted into this system. Absolutely.
How do you see, like Marion mentioned, that the EU taxonomy is shaping the developments now? Is it driving, is it accelerating progress?
I would say so. And what we see is interesting here is that we actually have to take a giant step in order to meet a positive climate, a positive environmental footprint. We are looking into new technology. I would say that Norway, the Norwegian aquaculture industry is highly innovative, and I hope that we will see a export of this new technology of offshore farming in even a wider progress than we see today. the onshore technology, the closed and the semi-closed, all of these steps are so important in order to meet both the need for increased production of food, but also a more sustainable production of the fish.
Very good. Doug, how do you see seafood in the EU Green Deal going forward? It's not been defined, right? But how is this something that you, as a financial institution, is following closely, I'm sure? What do you see is developing there with the taxonomy and with seafood?
Yeah, no, it seems like, will take a while. It looks like, fisheries will be included, in the next update, as far as we understand. But that, aquaculture is, they haven't really said anything concrete about it. At this stage, I don't think that's a big problem, really. But, at some point, when the EU taxonomy covers more and more sectors and more companies, at some point, you could think that would be a problem to not be included if, the taxonomy becomes the real sort of green gold standard, so to speak. But, at least for now, and I think for, a good while into the future, the current, so to say, green bond, green financing scheme will live perfectly fine in parallel with the European taxonomy. And, also the European sort of green bond framework is also consistent with the current market standards. So it looks like, it won't be either one or the other. It looks like these things will be able to live well in parallel. But, having said that, of course, it is much better to be included. But we should also, worry a little bit about, like, how would aquaculture be classified within the taxonomy? Like, how many companies would actually be classified as green? And I think, one perspective is that aquaculture has a good climate story to tell, but then you have the local environmental footprint and, like, how will the EU taxonomy deal with the, do no significant harm part of this story? Because, you have to weigh these things against each other, and it's, not obvious what the answer would be, even if we feel it should definitely be classified as green.
Yeah, it's very black and white, you can say, or brown or green right now. And if you're in the middle of that, it's not so easy to tell how it might develop. Marion, you mentioned climate targets and working with climate change mitigation and resilience. What is Lerøy's take on this? I see, there's a lot of movements, as I mentioned, science-based targets. Where do you put your focus now?
Yeah, we actually recently just published our science-based targets, where we aim to reduce our overall footprint by 46% within 2030, based on 2019 as a baseline. And this target is aligned with 1.5 degree pathway. And we see this as a really important steering wheel to where we want to move the company going forward. We believe that, setting climate targets is, of course, our responsibility, but it's also will become a competitive advantage in the transition to a low carbon economy. As we know, like you mentioned, the governments, we see the governments, our customers and consumers all have a larger focus on climate-related issues. And we also see that retail chains now assessing ambitious climate goals in their value chain. So we think that this will be a competitive advantages for us going forward. We recognize that most of our emissions lie in our scope 3 emissions, which is our indirect emissions related to feed consumption and air transport to overseas markets. And we have started the work of mapping and gathering information on how to reach this goal.
Very good. Congrats on setting the science-based target. That's a long process, I know. So
it is
great to hear that you now you launched and set the goal. That's a great achievement. I think it's interesting developments, and of course it's not only the financing that matters here. Measuring, as you've been mentioning, measuring sustainability is also important. How do you get the data, and how can you make sure that you have progress towards targets? Transparency, of course, an issue as well, where the seafood industry is doing well in indexes such as the Fair Protein Producer Index, but still, many things to work on going forward as well. Lisa, where do you, as you will have our final comment today, where do you see the market developing now in terms of blue financing in terms of seafood? Where do you advise everyone to look going forward?
Well, the most significant investments of new farming technology, digital development, collaboration, green consumer trends, all of this is in this decade. And this is extremely interesting for everybody, also those who are not in this industry today, but who are looking to become service or product suppliers. And looking to 2030, so where does that bring the industry? And I will actually like to take this opportunity to invite all of you for our launch of the Marine Aquaculture Forecast 2050, June the 9th at the North Atlantic Seafood Forum, where we're going to have a very interesting panel lists with us, where we see where the future is going.
That's very nice. Very much looking forward to seeing DNV looking into the crystal ball. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you, Marion and Doug, for sharing your insights. I would also like to mention before we round off this panel, for those of you who would like some more information about this topic, we did run a series of seafood sprints in the Global Ocean platform as well earlier this year. Finance was one of 3 topics, and you can find the summary report online, and I'll also share it in the chat. And Eric will, of course, give us an update on all the activities in the global platform later in this seminar. So thank you very much to all of you, and over to you, Kim.
Thanks a lot, Wenche, and thank you so much for all the insights in this panel. We are now going to the next panel that is also about the ocean, of course, and ocean and finance. And I'm going to invite my fellow panelists on board. So we have Lars Løddestøl, the CEO of Storebrand. Line Asker, she's a partner in the governance group. And of course, Øystein Jensen, he is the Chief Sustainability Officer in Odfjell. Welcome to all of you this morning. I hope you can hear me out there. Yes, good. I think we have 20 minutes for this panel discussion as well. So I think I'm just going to, just start straight ahead. And perhaps there are some repeating questions here because it's or discussions, but I would like to have the perspectives of you guys as well. And Line, I think we will start with the T word, the taxonomy that comes up all over the place, and perhaps just to sort of talk again a bit about how does the ocean industries make part of the EU taxonomy today, and whether it's really the right mechanism to ensure sustainable oceans.
Yes, as the last panel discussed, the seafood industry, the fisheries and the aquaculture, they are not defined, they're not part of the taxonomy today. So for fisheries, there will be some targets and thresholds going forward, and we have to see when the aquaculture will be defined. But shipping is now part of the EU taxonomy, so yeah. But there will also be some more thresholds on the sustainable use and protection of water and marine resources. So it will be very interesting to see what that will actually, what the targets will be and how the system for the ocean space will actually look like. And I think what is important to remember with the EU taxonomy is that is that you can use this as targets.
So if you are not defined as sustainable today, you can use the taxonomy to set targets for where you want to be in the future. And you can use this in sustainable linked bond frameworks to set targets for where you want to go. So yeah, you can see this as a tool and a science-based tool. So in that way, it's positive. But I'm not sure it will be the only mechanism going forward, because you know, it's difficult for the taxonomy to encompass all details. So I think there will also be useful with other mechanisms going forward.
And Øystein, thanks a lot, Line, for that. Øystein, just to follow up on that, perhaps, how does the shipping industry look at this? Because I mean, some would say, and I saw that the head of the Norwegian Shipping Association said that, you know, better be part of the taxonomy and, you know, from the start, really work on to make it as concrete and actionable as possible, and, you know, to promote the shipping industry instead of working against the taxonomy. How do you look at that?
Well, thank you, Kim. I think it's wise to just think about taking one step back and saying that because the taxonomy is not the aim and the goal. Taxonomy is just a tool of classification for the finance to drive the finance towards the ultimate goal, because the ultimate goal is to transfer the economy into a low carbon and more efficient. And in order to do that, you need that classification. So that's the kind of taxonomy. And that means that is primarily directed to finance, to allocate allocate capital. And then it's for the companies that we need to sort of follow the drive from the finance community. So the challenge is that if you look at the investment universe today, about 5% or perhaps less would be taxonomy aligned. And if you look at shipping with the new delegated act for shipping, we'll see that for deep sea shipping, which I represent, it will not be taxonomy aligned in many years until you get a full zero emission vessel in the water. But that doesn't mean that, as Line said, that you could aim at it. So you can have this as a target, and it will drive us. It will drive capital and will drive our thinking. So taxonomy in a short term will be something that we know it's there, we know it, but we also realize that we will not be aligned with that in several years to come. But that doesn't mean that we will stop thinking about it and be having that dialogue with our investors and also looking at dedicated financial products.
And I think this also brings us to the topic, you know, like many people already in this discussions today have said, the sustainability development goals and the climate goals are, we would say that the largest business opportunity of our time. You know, let's solve the challenges and the problems that the humanity and the planet has. And both Odfjell and other actors have already has started to use sustainability-linked bonds, green bonds. And perhaps let's play that ball to you, Lars in Storebrand. To, you know, so there is not only the taxonomy; there's also the possibility of issuing bonds and releasing capital in that way, right? Could you perhaps take us a bit through the development you see on green bonds, but perhaps specifically on the sustainability-linked bond that, for example, Odfjell has issued, that links it directly to the targets and the goals of the company?
Thank you for letting me participate in the discussion. A very interesting and very important discussion. I think maybe look at this maybe in two different ways. First of all, Storebrand and our own operation, we want to make that as green as possible. So we issued a green bond recently. We went out to the European market to raise 300 million euros. We actually were signed up for more than 1 billion euros within just a few hours. So there's an enormous demand for green bonds and green financing. That is partly driven by more regulatory focus on what we need to do as corporations in terms of the green shift, but also in terms of driving financing towards green initiatives. And this is where green financing and financing and sustainable measures and things that we do can link together in integrated reporting and really get integrated. So when you do green investments, you can get cheaper financing. It drives down the cost of financing. You do more of it rather than brown investments, which would be increasingly more expensive to do. The other part is that Storebrand is Norway's largest private investor with 1 trillion kroner under management. And we as an investor, we also have demand from our customers to buy into green and blue and sustainable investments. So that's indeed one of the drivers behind our own growth, is that we have been in the forefront of green investments or ESG investments for a long period of time, since 1995 actually. And so we, as an investor, we buy into these bonds. We bought into the first blue bond that was made in the Baltic Sea, and we were part of actually facilitating making that and similar bonds. So you have both green financing drives more green investments, and there's a huge demand for green investments, so a lot of money flowing into looking for good investment opportunities in blue bonds, green bonds, sustainability-linked bonds, etc.
I think this is a good link to you, Øystein, as well. Your sustainability-linked bond was also over. I mean, there were too many requests for it, right? So it's also oversigned. But why did you decide to do a sustainability-linked bond and not a blue bond? I mean, for us that are not specialists on the bonds, you know, blue bond, green bond, sustainability-linked bond. So give us sort of an insight to that and how the mechanism worked for you as a company.
Yes, we started that process more than a year ago, and we looked at various sustainable financing alternatives, and we looked at green bonds, green financing, and we see that because the green bonds is a dedicated use of proceeds, that means that we had to have a dedicated green project or a green investment, and we struggled to find that. But then we saw the development of a sustainability-linked financing. And that's not dedicated exactly into climate, or it could be related to environmental, social, and governance matters. And then we started that process last year and discussed various different kind of KPIs within those subjects. But since we ended up being the first one in the Nordics and first one in our industry, so it was easy. So it was important for us to make it kind of simple and easy to understand for the investors as well. So that's because we narrowed it down to what's material for us, which is the climate related and journey towards decarbonization. So we did a sustainability-linked bond linked to our climate targets. And since we are a global compact signatory, since we are in the blue economy, and since we are addressing the tipping point of decarbonization, it could be also qualify as a blue bond. But so for all practical purposes, it can also be a blue bond. But since we were the first one in our industry, we wanted to make sure that it was easy to understand. It was related to the newly issued ICMA principles that was launched in June. So we decided to follow that framework and saying that it is a sustainability-linked bond. But it for all practical purposes, it can also be a blue bond.
If I may comment on Øystein's comment here, I think it's very, very important to make the transition. And so, like it was said in the previous conversation here, it's either black or white or brown or green. But what's really important is to bring ourselves as an economy and as a world from the brown to the green. And that's where these sustainability-linked bonds, etc., are very, very important to show KPIs on the transfer from where we are until towards something better, until it becomes totally green or blue, as Øystein mentioned, which will, according to the taxonomy, be a few years away for your industry, but we're on the way there.
So I think this is bringing us back to where Line started, really, on that you can use the taxonomy and, of course, other sets of definitions and KPIs to lead the business of the company. Lina, I would like to go back to you because you said that the taxonomy is most likely not the only way forward, especially for the maritime sector or sectors. what other bodies do you see? Is the World Bank, the International Marine Contractors Association, for example? Is it sector-wise regulations we see, or what is the future, do you think? I mean, on both the definitional side and the new kinds of financial products that we are hearing now. I know it's a big question, but I'll leave it up to you.
Yes, and I would actually like to go back to the sustainability-linked bonds, because I think that's an important instrument, and it's a very immature market. So we don't know how these instruments will actually look like in 5 years. We have to learn and investigate how we can use these instruments. But what's important, and as Øystein mentioned, what is the material impact your company can have in the sustainability and in the ocean space? And you have to try to find your materiality impacts and then set targets. And those targets should be ambitious and easy for investors to understand. So we don't know how the taxonomy for the ocean space will look like yet. So if that will be holistic enough, we can use that. If not, you have to be a part of this. I call this in Norwegian dugnad. We have to try to develop this to actually drive the transition. So I think the taxonomy will be one of the tools, but I think we all have some work to do here to actually define how we can use the financial markets to drive the transition. So,
but I would like just to comment also. I think that there's a lot of people focusing on the regulatory side and on the target side. For us, it's we also look at it on the opportunity side. Of course, we look at this as a de-risking opportunity when we're talking to investors. So let me say, like example, when we're talking to bond investors, we're talking about reducing the downside risk. We're reducing the risk of assets that's not available and stranded assets, etc., and regulation and exceeding fees and tax and all that stuff. But we also talk to equity investors when we're talking about the upside, because there's a tremendous opportunity of being a leader in this field. We see the opportunity that we got with regards to capital cost on the sustainable finance products. We see that we will do the biggest transition of our industry in modern time, and there will be tremendous opportunities going forward. So I think that for us, of course, we would like to follow the targets, we will follow the frameworks, we will follow the ambitions and the goals of the taxonomy or the principles of frameworks. But for us as a company, we need to act responsible, and we need to reduce risk, and we need to take and grasp the opportunities that we see ahead.
But I think this is so important what you're saying now, Øystein, because this is exactly the sort of two pillars of the UN Global Compact. I would say that we are trying to to continue working more and more on one side, KPIs, regulation, compliance, the sort of necessity that, and some of them are now becoming hygiene factors, but of course also more than that. And then on the other side, the business opportunities. So what are the investment opportunities in a 10 years perspective? And we are indeed ahead of a huge industrial, or in the midst of a huge industrial change for decades. I think this is, I mean, also the so-called blue road to the climate summit, COP26 in November. I mean, they're focusing on how do you harness ocean electricity, maritime transport without emissions, low carbon blue food, which we have heard about earlier today, and of course, nature-based solutions. But I would like to challenge you a bit on this, how perhaps Lars first, and what do you see as the largest business opportunity or investment opportunities in the next 10 years? We have already discussed Jen, but do you have any surprises for us? Some areas you see that haven't gotten that much attention for investments yet?
Well, I'm not a specialist on the different subsectors here, but Øystein's comment was very, very good. The opportunities arising from the green shift are enormous. You can find probably a company with an old ship which is very pollutive and is generating a good cash flow today. So if you're looking only for cash flow, that might seem like a good investment. However, you know it's a stranded asset. The boat is not going to be able to float much longer. It's not going to get access to harbors. It will end up as a stranded asset, even if the cash flow is good today. Then you have someone else with a ship which is very environmentally friendly, possibly electric, but it still has a challenge to go into harbors because there is no electricity infrastructure in the harbor to reload batteries or whatever. And the investment opportunities and the overall infrastructure around green shipping, there are enormous opportunities. You have to really disrupt the whole infrastructure, which is fossil today, into some electric and renewable infrastructure around harbors. So huge opportunity. Similarly, on the vessels and on the different subsectors of the industry, those companies can capture the opportunities that can make a profit on really solving some of the 17 SDGs or other parts of the green shift. They are the winners of tomorrow. They are the companies that will make a profit tomorrow. And you see that the way the financial markets today price value towards growth, the growth companies are really the companies that has a good valuation, because there are so many opportunities to benefit from the green shift and generate revenues in the future. And the financial industry is investors are very concerned about stranded assets and liabilities linked to the old brown industry.
And Øystein, how does it look from your side? What are there any surprising investments, or are there the obvious ones that we are already talking about in discussions with regards to next?
No big surprises, but I'd just like to say that global shipping represents about 3% of the global CO2 emissions today. So we are a part of the problem. But there are no other more efficient way of transporting goods across the world than shipping. So shipping is also the solution. So we can talk about stranded assets and possibility, but we will do a major transition, and that opens up for enormous amount of opportunities, because shipping will be the solution. It will be at least a very, very big part of the integrated solution going forward, because there are no more efficient way of transporting goods over large distances than shipping is today.
I will give the last final word to you, Line, to your perspective on the way ahead before we're concluding to move on in the program.
Yes, because I think we see the market sentiment are going more and more to the impact investing. So the companies that can find tomorrow's solutions, and in the ocean space, there are many different solutions that we need. It's both about protecting the water and marine resources. I think also seafood will be a very important solution going forward, because we need to feed a growing population, and the seafood industry is actually seen as a big part of the solution to actually be able to do that. So there are a lot of opportunities here, and the markets are actually as you can see, the greenest, the dark green funds, they are really they are getting a lot of attention these days. So I think you will also see some beneficial financing for those companies that can come up with tomorrow's solutions.
Thanks a lot to all the panelists. It was a short but sweet panel. I would add last reminder and commercial for our activities. Of course, we are heading towards the opening, the introductory meeting of the UK Norway Sustainable Finance Action Platform, where we have got a lot of attraction, a lot of companies already, and finance actors, of course, primarily signed up. So and the focus will be indeed on industries that we have in common with the UK, Norway, and the UK being the two of the largest shipping industry nations, energy, of course, and not least all the fish that is going into British cod and fish and chips. So please look it up on our homepage if you're interested, or just contact us afterwards. And I will now turn to Erik Jerski, that is the coordinator of the global action platform on ocean for some news on both COP26 and other international affairs. So Erik, over to you.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you for being part of this great session. Two super panels. I'll just reflect a couple of minutes on what's been said, because I totally agree with Øystein and most speakers today. Sustainability is about two things. It's about understanding risk and opportunity. And we see an enormous drive in the international financial capital market to really understand and navigate on these issues. What's risk? What is the future stranded assets? And what are the business opportunities opening up? What are the new technology avenues? And what industries are the ones of tomorrow? For the ocean industries, I mean, and it's great to be here discussing this in Norway. I'm a Norwegian as well, as you probably can hear, because this is the leading ocean cluster in the world. We even have this UN Global Compact Network meeting in English. That's how global we have become, probably. But, you know, we have the leading aquaculture competencies. We are leading classification companies, banks, stock exchanges, science, offshore energy, and of course, specialized shipping. So we could really build the global platform only with Norwegian stakeholders and have the super input. But of course, UN Global Compact is an international organization. We have a broad stakeholder alliance, and we've been working on this for 3 years. And we are working with local networks all over the world to get input on trends and solutions emerging elsewhere also. But going back to the core issue today, finance and the blue economy, it's a super opportunity, as Øystein said lately. Let us take the three major, or I will say 4 major ocean industries that we will see big financial drivers on for the next decade already. The shipping industry, international shipping, 60,000 ships will have to be transformed into a greener fleet, hopefully a net zero fleet by 2050. That is the biggest change since the sailing fleet went into marine diesel or machine engines just over 100 years ago. We will see offshore energy continue to grow, especially with offshore wind. IEA, the International Energy Agency, updated just last week its estimates for the future of renewables, increasing their target by 25% compared to 6 months ago. So it's a fantastic drive in this territory, and we see much of this is also driven by the new US administration. And yesterday, the first offshore large wind farm in the US was approved. And that is very fascinating, also with Norwegian eyes, because this is something that maybe Norwegian service providers will be a part of the value chain, depending on the Jones Act and where you're positioned. But it's a very deep signal that this is a trend taking off. Seafood. We know that is a low carbon alternative to feed a growing world population in need for more healthy and nutritious proteins. Been discussed here today, RAS and other more sustainable solutions, land-based alternatives, or better control of the fjord or offshore farms. Today, these proteins makes up a very, very small part of the global diet, but there are huge opportunities to grow this if you do it right. The fourth and last I would like to mention now, there are many others as well growing up, but is the nature-based solution with carbon removal, seaweed. Today seaweed is produced at large amounts in Asia, but by small farmer collectives or family industries. We will see a future where maybe seaweed can actually play a significant role in carbon removal or production of biofuel. Lots of potential here as well to have a large new sustainable industry. Now, there are 3 elements I would like to mention for the pathway that has been discussed today. How do finance navigate in this? And we work a lot with the large institutional investors, banks, and classification companies. And we see there are, of course, three trends. It's the political process. You have the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement, where political ambitions are set, and where also there are mechanisms for companies to quantify their own ambitions and targets. And then you have industry standards as number 2, with ICMA, green bonds and sustainability-linked bond standards. As mentioned, we also have now, we are working with ICMA on integrating the blue bond framework within the ICMA organization. And you have other business standards to really put your targets with a science-based target initiatives, etc. And then thirdly, you have the regulatory level with the EU Taxonomy, now really framing this and making this into a liability, a civil liability, if you are a fund manager or investor and selling something as green or sustainable and it's not aligned with the taxonomy, you have actually you can actually be sued, and that is that what you do now, you can be sued 5 years down the road. So it's important to keep that in mind, that there is a political level, there's a business standard level, there's a regulatory level. That said, as mentioned by many here today, there is a real interest from investors to target also that political level in their investments, because there is an opportunity opening up and there's a risk of actually being invested in something that is more brown or brown in itself, which is not necessarily the profile of the fund. And we see an increasing amount of pension funds and government funds being earmarked for sustainability and green investments. Going forward, in the short term, the COP26 will be most likely the most important political event this year, targeting these issues in particular. At the UN Global Compact headquarters, we have seconded our good colleague Ignace Bilcock as the new lead for the high-level champions on ocean. So he will coordinate the ocean work at COP26 closely with ourselves. We will, for our practicalities, be his secretariat, and we will host not only a high-level meeting and side events at the COP, but the whole work of updating the pathways of the Marrakesh Partnership. That's a formal part of the COP work to set pathways of expectations for the different sectors and industry. This is something we do with many organizations, and we coordinate it with partner businesses, governments, and academic institutions. What we see is, of course, it's a clear call for the 1.5 degree commitment, the race to zero, which I urge every company here to sign up to and do the process of setting a science-based target. Not easy for all industries, not especially for shipping, and it might seem like a tad complicated process, but this is the most important undertaking that you can do to get to be part of the big coalition going forward to COP26 and beyond. And the call for this is clearly expected by the Secretary General of the United Nations, the COP Secretariat itself, and of course we at the UN Global Compact. We have the ambition of the 1.5 degree scenario. So the Race to Zero is the formal campaign, which you can sign up at the COP26 website. And the Science-Based Target Initiative is a way to show your commitment to this. Additional to that, I think it's good that you have an engagement with the local network of the UN Global Compact. Always invited to also take contact with us at the global headquarters, but we work very good with the local networks, and happy to invite you also to some of the work streams going forward directly to the COP. Some Norwegian companies are already directly engaged in that, of course, with the DNV and Kongsberg and others having seconded personnel part-time to us to assist the Secretariat of really framing this in a good way. And maybe as a final conclusion, I think the finance market are the ones really looking at this. How can we understand the new opportunities rising from these industries? And nobody is better positioned, I think, than the Norwegian capital players. We know that because we have been meeting with people from New York and Singapore and China and France and UK, and there is limited cross-sector understanding of the ocean industries in other nations. In Norway, I think we have seen the cross-understanding of competencies between the ocean sectors for a long time, and how these can enable new growth and risk awareness and opportunity awareness for the next few decades. Super exciting. There are ETFs and funds in the planning, and there are also indices and other finance mechanisms that are being worked on. Happy to discuss that with everybody here, of course, because I think that's what the world needs, is a more agile finance market that is available, able to really count in the risk and opportunities of this new decade of a bluer and greener planet. So that I would like to thank you, and good luck with going forward with the national platform. I think the 4 points that Knut mentioned, blue taxonomy, finance, science-based target initiatives, and biodiversity, super targets to work on, and happy to get input from you on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Erik. Always a pleasure to hear the more international perspectives. You are doing a great work internationally. I think it will be more and more important with the input from the Norwegian players, and as Erik mentioned, the Secretariat towards COP26, where we, the local network, have a great collaboration with Erik and the team. Just to do some final thoughts before we finish this session. So the platform was created out of a need to reach the SDGs. Also, because we saw the lack of action from other players, and Norway had to take a leading role. We had also to create something that was based on the needs of our members. So around that process, we developed many ideas. We have also, with the projects that were not put into the past the consultancy phase and now into the accelerator phase, we have created a problem bank where we will store these problems, and we will bring these problems and solutions into other places where they might succeed or get traction. And also, just to reiterate what was said here, science-based targets, science-based targets, science-based targets. As you might have received emails, most of you, it's the business ambition from 1.5. That will be a quite complete and very extensive course where we are collaborating with headquarters, we're collaborating the Nordic networks, and we're doing local events on that as well. Also, the next stakeholder meetings, we need to make sure that the second cycle of the Ocean Platform is related to real-world issues. We have now shared some of the work streams we're thinking about, but nothing is written in stone, and we will adapt them to the needs of the companies. So please attend the stakeholder meeting, the internal stakeholder meeting, where we will discuss some of these issues. With that, I just want to say thanks to all participants. Special thanks to the International Ocean Platform, to Wenche, to Kim for leading the debates, to the participants of the debates, and thank you for offering such great insight on your own business, what you think about the future, and also to all of you, don't hesitate to contact me or any of the other people in the UN Global Compact if you have any questions or comments about things that were said here today or past time. And we're looking forward also to collaborating with all of you in the future. So to that, as a last thing, thank you very much to Karan, who has organized the Ocean Platform for the last at least 6 months for the great work you have done. Large applause and gratitude from us at the UN Global Compact for the great work you have done. You have not been on stage today, but you are remembered, and we know the great work you have done. So thank you to everyone. So that will be the last words, and I don't know if they'll be famous or not, but at least thank you to everyone.